Sunday, November 1st, 2020. 2020, yeah. Um, just as a reminder, I think everybody who's here probably recognizes we have shifted to our time. So it is now 10:30. This is our first Sunday where we have something of a Dharma talk for half an hour. And then we'll have a meditation at 11 and that at 12 noon. We will have a Dharma conversation period for 45 minutes. So, a lot of anxiety in the air. I need to put on my earpiece.
You were coming in so clear, I couldn't tell if you had it on or not.
Yeah.
That's nice.
A lot of anxiety in the air. A lot of partisanship in the air. And so I thought I would talk a little bit about two words today, dialogue and dialectic. And I will specifically be talking about dialogue with people, and I will be talking about a dialectic with respect to views. So dialogue, it's an interesting situation nowadays. We all probably know some people who we have very, very differing views with. And I thought I would just think out loud about one of my own experiences recently where I think I failed miserably at having a dialogue. And I really do feel rather seriously that our ability to acknowledge others and their views has an enormous amount of spiritual power and spiritual benefit. To be able to acknowledge someone means, one, we are practicing some kind of mindfulness. We're not stuck in reactivity. And two, we are really respecting the other. And respect is an interesting word, and it really does have some aspects of compassion and love in it. It's really holding someone as worthwhile and holding them as valuable. And I think being able to have a meaningful dialogue, minimally being able to acknowledge someone else's view is really respect in action. So I was talking with someone I know fairly well, and they tend to read and listen to, it really doesn't matter because this can hold if people are, as it were, to the right of us or to the left of us. But this person, this friend, listens to very, very progressive radio and reads very progressive material. And it's not, some of the views I was a little bit surprised at. So we were talking, and within maybe the last year, there was a wonderful article on Dr. Peter Hotez in the medical center, Baylor, infectious diseases, in the Texas Monthly. And in great detail, it talked about how he goes all over the world, third world countries, looks for identifying disease clusters that nobody's even aware of, and then gets really, really active in developing vaccines for those disease clusters. And I was just enormously impressed with this, what I saw as bodhisattva activities. He's really saving a lot of lives, and he's a scientist. He's using his mind. He's really concerned about people. And I was very, very taken with the article and taken with him. And of course, nowadays he's on TV, on Twitter, just about every day. So many, many people are familiar with him. So this friend of mine starts telling me that, should be very, very cautious and skeptical about any vaccines that anybody develops. And I was a bit surprised. And we both know someone with polio. And I said, but come on. I mean, polio has been eradicated because of vaccines. And, the vaccines are such amazingly useful. Oh, my friend said, you don't really know. It's not been eradicated. It's still prevalent. And it's just, they're not identifying it as polio. And I frankly was shocked. Yeah, I was shocked. I was shocked silly. And I just knew I didn't want to pursue that conversation because I just didn't know where to go with it. And, so one of the things that I do think that is occurring nowadays, and people talk about this, is that there is a way in which, just to get really, really into the weeds of this kind of conversation where we don't even necessarily agree about what the facts are and even what are facts. But that being said, if I had my wits about me and if I were more mindful in the moment, I could have just said, so it's your view that polio is still occurring and that it is underreported and that the vaccine is not fully effective. And that would just be to acknowledge her view. Wouldn't mean that I would agree with her. And, again, if I had my wits about me, I could have said, do you want to know what my view is or my perspective? So what I realized in retrospect is that, while I may have thought, God, my friend is an extremist and we can't have a conversation, but really the we that wasn't having a conversation was, to a large extent, me. And, I don't know how far we would have gone if I'd said, I hear that you feel that polio has not been eradicated and it's still present, being called something else. But again, if I had some presence and some spaciousness, I could have said, do you think it's really I mean, are there hundreds of cases of what you're describing having some other name? Are there thousands? Are there millions of such cases? You know, how is it that, I don't hear about this? I might have heard her presentation of her world. I might have thought it was kind of cuckoo, but at least I would have acknowledged and respected and taken it in. And, I could have also asked for time and space to share my perspective. So it was actually helpful for me to think about how, in an attempt, well, it's really in a way to protect myself, I didn't really create a spaciousness between the two of us to have a conversation where I was able to entertain views dramatically different from my own. And it's in a way interesting, especially given my profession, where I'll sit with couples and they'll both describe an event, and really they are not describing the same event whatsoever. I mean, it's two people who are describing dramatically different occurrences, but they were both there, and it's described in starkly different ways. And I do have a tolerance for that when I'm wearing my professional hat, but I wasn't able to really engage in a dialogue with my friend. And I'm sort of, again, just speaking out loud. And I think this is happening more and more when we talk with our friends, our relatives, our neighbors. We do the shorthand click off, which is, oh, they support so-and-so, and therefore I'm not even going to waste my time talking to them. And they do the same with us. And, they're using this phrase nowadays of we get siloed. We're in like corn silos where we're all kind of surrounded by circular walls, and we don't even say, tell me about, what your view is. Now, we may ultimately really disagree about even what the facts are, and that's happening more and more. But, could we even acknowledge that, wow, so, for you, there are no hungry people in the United States, and for me, there are millions of people who are not getting enough food. We seem to disagree even on that level of fact. Isn't that curious and interesting? Most of us, I think, are now in a kind of the business of feeling we need to convince people of our position. And my friend certainly presents that way when she talks. It's clear that she feels that I need to buy her perspective. She just keeps telling me I need to listen to these people on the radio or watch these TV stations or read these books or read these articles. So there's a lot of emotional energy being thrown at me in terms of sensing that I need to sort of convert. But even so, why can't I just say, oh, well, let me hear about that? Oh, isn't that interesting? Oh, okay. Do you want to hear my view? So dialogue, I think, is becoming a lost behavior in our culture. And it's a kind of an interesting place where we could practice spiritual values of mindfulness and really respect. And within respect, there's a kind of appreciation, which is part of love, and a compassion within respect for the other. So I offer that as something to think about. And to take that a little bit further with the word dialectic. And dialectic is derived from, it turns out, the word dialogue. It can mean just very, very something related to dialogue, but it also can sometimes be used more philosophically as the confrontation between two metaphysically contrary views. That's a dialectic as well. So again, we're in very, very polarized times, and people are, there's kind of the us, and then there's other. And if one hasn't been involved with spirituality at all, many people are seeing the other as kind of irredeemable. But within the context of Buddhist practice, there are a few ways that the other, even if they disagree with us heartily, we're encouraged to see others in a spiritual framework. And so, let's say politician X is someone I just totally disagree with. I want fracking and they don't want fracking. I want people to be able to not wear masks, and they're insisting that everybody wear masks. I just think they're terrible for our society and for our culture and for our country. Terrible, terrible. You ban fracking, it's just terrible for the economy, for productivity, for freedom. I just have a very, very strong view about such a person. But I also am involved with Buddhist practice. And we practice, we've talked about them a lot, the four immeasurables: equanimity, love, and compassion, and joy. And equanimity is a teaching that we really strive to see all beings equally. It's clear there are some beings who are friends, there are some beings who are neutrals, and there are some beings who are our enemies. And what is an enemy? An enemy is somebody who wishes us ill. And if I'm in favor of fracking and this politician is saying they're against fracking, then they're wishing me ill. They're my enemy. They want to hurt me. Maybe I own shares in a humongous fracking company. They want to ruin my business and my economy. Within the Buddhist framework, one way that equanimity is taught is that whatever this person's position is in this lifetime, whatever harm they seem to be wishing us in this life, because of the nature of rebirth, they've been in some helpful relationship with me in the past. And isn't it suitable for me to recognize that helpful relationship that they were in the past with me? That they were very, very kind, They may have fed me. They may have taken me in from the cold. They may have been my mentor. And is it appropriate to just be stuck in this kind of unilateral view, or just a one-sided view that this person wants to ban fracking and therefore is my enemy, and not take into account, they were an Eskimo and I got lost in the tundra one time and they took me in and they fed me and they gave me some nice walrus meat to eat and keep me warm. And weren't they kind? Incredibly kind. And so can I have an even attitude towards this person? Now, this is a dialectic because there's a kind of movement between what is and what I'm training in. There's a dialectic in terms of a kind of different metaphysical view. One metaphysical view is that this person is an enemy, and it's like 100% enemy. And, through and through, this is a person of enemitude. Just they're constituted as an enemy. And without a spiritual framework, we see kind of enemies as kind of autonomously self-existent enemies. But we have a spiritual framework. We have a contrary view, and that is, this person was very, very kind. In a prior life, they may have saved my life. And can I bring that imaginatively into my present orientation to this person so that I'm not just fixated on one aspect of them? So there is one way of talking about dialectics, which is very, very interesting. And when, up until last night, when I double-checked on Google, I thought that this was the work of Wilhelm Hegel, who was a great philosopher, German philosopher, I think in the 19th century. But it turns out it was the work of another great German philosopher named Johann Fichte. And that is, he saw dialectics working as there's a thesis, namely there's a position. There's an antithesis, namely there's an opposite position. And then ultimately there's a synthesis, something that brings the two together. So when we are practicing, the thesis is, you're anti-fracking, you are my enemy. The antithesis of that is, oh, in my past life, you saved my life as an Eskimo. You gave me walrus meat when I was hungry, and it saved me. Oh, you were so kind. You were so kind. That's an antithesis to my seeing this person as an enemy. They were so kind. And the synthesis is bringing those two together so that I can realize, even though you practically are against me, and maybe you're a politician, we don't wipe out reality when we're practicing Dharma. We don't say, you don't vote because everybody is equal. No, we know that this person is against me because I want fracking. So I'll make my vote accordingly. But at the same time, I know that this is a human being, that all beings have been in every relationship to me close, neutral, and distant because of rebirth. And that at some deep level, I don't need to be in an orientation of just seeing this person in some kind of black and white, fully this or fully that, that this is a much more complicated situation. And I can be, in some deeper way, even towards them. The synthesis. So it's actually an opportunity nowadays. All of us are fully immersed in dualistic partisanship. I mean, I don't think most of us know people who are just like, oh, an election, who cares? And, things are going on. COVID, who cares? I mean, everybody's got very, very strong views about everything nowadays. Masks, yes. Masks, no. Parties, yes. Parties, no. Vaccines, yes. Vaccines, no. Republicans or Democrats, yes. The other party, no. And it's okay. We are humans. We have divisions. We see things differently. But can we, on the one hand, dialogue with people who see things differently? And on the other, can we appreciate that we are also practitioners of Dharma, and that one of the things we're trying to do is to hold all beings in a kind of evenness, recognizing that everything is totally shifty and that enemies today will be friends tomorrow, will be neutrals the next day, and on and on and on. And this is a deep perspective. This is a synthesis. This is a synthesis of Dharma view, the metaphysical view of the Dharma, and the metaphysical view of, just a realist who takes everything as it appears. So I have today talked about dialogue, and I think really seeing opportunities when we talk to very, very partisan friends, relatives, people we meet, of just being able to say, oh, let me hear more about that, and are you interested in hearing my view? And maybe realizing, it seems that ultimately we differ about what even the facts are. Isn't that interesting? Can we go to that and to have a respectful, compassionate, tender appreciation of other people? There's Dharma practice in that, in dialogue. And can we see that there is a dialectic possible as well when we get into thinking about all of the partisan positions that we're exposed to, whichever side of the fence we happen to fall on, when we are in an extreme position. An extreme is just where we're not really taking account of the other person as a real complex other. Can we use some of the contemplations of Dharma, especially the contemplation that things change even within one life? Our enemies become friends, our friends become enemies. If it's hard for us to think about previous lifetimes, most of us are old enough to know that in this lifetime, or very soon before our lifetimes, look at Europe. Germany was our worst enemy. Today, it's our best ally. Until most recently, Germany was our strongest ally in Europe. Britain in 1776 was our worst enemy, and now it's our best friend in NATO. England is our best friend, was our worst enemy. Vietnam was our worst enemy. Japan was our worst enemy. Who's our staunchest ally in Asia? Japan. Who do we go to for confronting China in the South Asia Sea? Vietnam. Within lifetime, enemies become friends, friends become enemies. These things change, people change. And certainly if we can even entertain, you don't have to hard believe it, but even if you can entertain something like rebirth, imagine the possibilities of the relationships that people have been in with us. It can be a dialectic, and it can be productive of developing evenness. So we've arrived at 11. We will take probably 1 minute break. Do we have to do, there's probably something that has to be shifted, Emily?
Everyone can stay on this meeting. I just need to change the YouTube video.
Yeah, okay. We can just stay where we are.